For decades, the criminal justice system has unreasonably used deadly forces on black males allegedly considered to be suspects or persons of interest. Documented historical accounts have shown how myths, stereotypes, and racist ideologies led to discriminatory policies and court rulings that fueled racial violence and resulted in the increase of black male incarceration today. In the United States, black men are 6 times as likely to go to jail or prison as white men. When hip-hop was born, racialized communities were in awe of this music's relatability and representation. Hip-hop was highly political and rebellious, and it became a voice for African Americans and the hardships they faced as they struggled to survive life in the ghetto, from police brutality to gang violence. Artists would use their platforms to speak on behalf of their incarcerated brothers who did not rise to the standard of white America. Years of racial inequality has reinforced the marginalization of black men, and so they react with this need to prove themselves and reclaim their power. Hip-hop legends like Tupac formulated this iconic image of him wearing a wife beater, a do-rag, and baggy pants to stand as a symbol of hope for his community, that people that look and dress like him can find success in these hard times. They took their so-called low culture and turned them into streetwear trends.
I got something to say.
I want to let you know where that sagging shit started. It started in the penitentiary area. SAG to advertise their ass. They get out of jail and they put the drawers on still sagging. The kids thought the shit was slick and the kids start sagging.
It was in prisons that belts were contraband, and as a result, prisoners' pants would sag below the waist, which came the trend of lowriding. This style was popularized in the 90s and was a convergence of the rise of rap and gang subcultures as a symbol of freedom and rebellion against mainstream standards. It seems like sagging sometimes has the feel of a full-on moral panic, as if the mere fashion choice automatically implies gang affiliation. And yet, Mark Wahlberg modeling for Calvin Klein and Justin Bieber are rewarded with screaming fans, and European designers are praised for runway looks. The same concept goes for the wife beater. The wife beater in particular has a long history that both contradicts and aids the negative connotations linked to the garment today, especially when it is worn by a black man. In 1947, in Detroit, Michigan, James Hartford Jr., a local man, was arrested for beating his wife to death. For months, images of his arrest were constantly being aired on news stations, in which he wore a dirty white tank top with baked bean stains on it. Of course, headlines referred to him as the wife beater, and it didn't take long for the crime to become synonymous with the shirt. However, I find it interesting how the skin color of the man wearing the tank top completely alters people's perception of who he is, and this notion has been epitomized over the years in films. Ever since Marlon Brando in Streetcar, the ribbed white tank top has become a staple for protagonists to offer implications of vulgarity and criminality. Despite Brando's character's abusive nature towards his wife, audiences seemed more interested in this actor who would become one of Hollywood's most adored heartthrobs. When a white man has been depicted in films in a wife beater, he is sexualized and revered as a macho alpha male that all women want. However, the second a black man is wearing one, it is automatically assumed that he is aggressive and dangerous. This negative image of black males, who are always portrayed with subordinate lifestyles and always dressed in clothes resembling prison wear, grows into a social expectation and makes this thug persona seem natural. And finally, a classic accessory that became a fashion statement in the 90s was the do-rag. Originally worn by poor African American slaves to tie their hair back in the 19th century, it was later used following the Harlem Renaissance to preserve hairstyles like cornrows and waves. After the Black Power movement in the late 60s and up until the 2000s, the do-rag became a fashion statement, especially among young African American men. Rappers, athletes, and the rest of American youth began wearing them around the clock and not just to sleep. It was common for young men to wear do-rags out in public in different colors and was a staple for the typical dress-down outfit. However, they soon became so controversial to wear in public that schools and universities banned do-rags on campus, and even the NFL and NBA banned any do-rag, scarf, or bandana from being worn on the field to avoid any player from being associated with a gang. Black expression is susceptible to criminalization because it's attached to a black body. It has always been made to seem like a black person's respectability won't save them, but not dressing like a thug might keep them alive. One great thing about social media is how it's provided the space to give the do-rag its due as a black culture artifact, with hashtag Do-Rag History Week on Twitter, designer brands merging their designs with the culture, and celebrities doing their part to reclaim the do-rag.
My do-rag says, My God wears a do-rag.
But the accessory has inched its way into the high fashion stratosphere. It is insulting that when European designers like Rick Owens and Chanel use black culture and claim it as their own, it is seen as revolutionary and high culture, and yet the black community has been wearing do-rags for centuries and they're seen as hoodlums. It's not what these garments are, it's who's wearing them. They are culturally appropriating a cultural touchstone of black hair care. These high-end European designers are making money off of their brand, while black women and men are experiencing anti-black policing and abandoning the durag in hopes of succeeding in the white corporate world. But it may be the only way to remove the stigma of the criminalized durag. It is unfortunate, and maybe not how the black community may have imagined it, but sometimes it takes mainstream celebrities and influencers like these to open people's minds to the cultural value and harmlessness of foreign customs. In this climate, this may be what it takes to change people's perspectives and take a step towards progress. Like many other styles and traditions born out of black culture, mainstream society predictably labeled the baggy pants, the wife beater, and the do-rag as something criminal and thuggish. But now, people of color are leading the charge to reclaim these garments and redefine them in their own terms. It feels like we're experiencing a black renaissance and seeing what happens when black people take control of their own narratives. Sharing and controlling the narrative around pieces of black culture in public spaces allows us to shatter the misconceptions behind them and humanize the people who practice them. Whether it be in art, music, or fashion, these garments are a marker of identity and black excellence, and they pay tribute to black traditions that should no longer be ridiculed, but celebrated.